Hello, everybody. Welcome to this series of videos where we're going to be talking about operation strategy in a global environment. Now, the title is a mouthful, so there are multiple pieces to it that we're going to be talking about. We'll be talking about the idea of what is a operation strategy. We'll talk about the idea of a mission for a company and basic strategy for a company, and then we'll see how that translates to an operations specific strategy. Then we'll talk about globalization and why globalization is important, and then we'll end this series of videos by talking about the idea of outsourcing. Right. Okay, so in this video, we'll talk about the idea of a few global strategies that companies have, and also why should companies globalize? Why does it make sense? Now, when talking about globalization, there are two different pieces to think about. One is that, as I talked about in my previous videos, operations and supply chain management sort of sit side by side. So operations management is all the activities within a single company that are used to convert inputs into outputs, right? So that's operations within a company. And supply chain is how multiple companies come together to build a single product, right? And each company does a smaller piece, and going from raw material all the way to final product, you have multiple companies involved in it. So when you talk about global strategies, you have to realize that you might have a global strategy for locating, say, part of the company in a different country or in a different region, or you might be collaborating with your suppliers or customers who might be in different locations around the world. So when you talk about global strategies, there are two different things, two sort of side-by-side things that we have to talk about. And here's a good example. Boeing, for example, sales and supply chain are worldwide, right? So they sell all over the world. Their supply chain is all over the world, but manufacturing happens in specific places, right? You know, Benetton has stores all over the world, and it's swiftly the way it manages its global strategy is it manufactures most of the stuff it sells. The designs come from internal designers. They rotate based upon the styles of the season and whatnot. But the main thing that on which they compete on is the fact that they're able to move their inventory in a very efficient manner, and we'll talk about more of that, right? So similarly, Sony's supply chain is outside the country, but majority of its manufacturing is in fact within Japan, right? Volvo similarly used to be a Swedish company, now is bought over by a Chinese company, and it assembles cars all over the world, right? And Haier is a Chinese-owned company who has manufacturing plants in the United States. So they make some in Kentucky, some in South Carolina. I think they were going to paste plant in Michigan, but I think that never came to be. But the idea is that that's the point there. So there's a Chinese company based in China, but part of its manufacturing process internally owned by Haier lives in South Carolina and in Kentucky. So that's a true global strategy within the company, as opposed to say something like Boeing, where their supply chain is worldwide, where their materials come from other companies, but their manufacturing can happen in multiple different places, right? So as the years have gone on, and this is not something that none of you know, but here is a nice graph that shows you what percentage of the world's GDP is based upon of world trade. So trade not within a company, within a country, but worldwide, right? So it went from 23-24% in 1970 to now more than 60% right now, right? There was a dip post recession and COVID and whatnot, but now we are back to the highest it has ever been, right? And so that's the idea. So globalization is a factor of life, and we need to know how to compete in a global environment, right? So why should we globalize? What is the importance? What is the reason why globalization needs to happen? Now, there are many reasons to be philosophically opposed to globalization, political, labor related. There are so many reasons why you might be against globalization, but there are good reasons to globalize too. So in this book specifically, the authors are very gung-ho about globalization. So you'll notice that in a lot of the chapters they sort of talk up the idea of globalization, and there are like I said, there are many positive aspects to globalization also, and we'll look at many of them today. So these are the main reasons to globalize: improving the supply chain, reducing costs and exchange rate risks, improving operations, understanding markets, improving products, and attracting a global talent. Now, any largest company, a medium to largest company, to grow its market will have to start selling its product or service outside the country where it began. Right. So if it just stays within the country where it began, it can have very nice operations. It can run for a very long time. And majority of the companies around the world do just this. But to be able to grow beyond what the market within a single country can offer, you have to globalize. You have to at least have global sales, if nothing else, right? And so it's important to know that. So here are some details of each of these 6 points that we talked about. So improving the supply chain. So locating your factories closer to where the supply resources are very important. So auto design in South California, perfume manufacturing in Grasse, France. So all of these are important places where expertise and low cost labor and raw material are available, right? So expertise for auto design is available in South California because that is where most of the auto designers for the long run have been. So it makes more sense to be around the talent. So if you have somebody who's working in one company and wants to move to a different company and they have to locate halfway across the country or I don't know, halfway across the world, that's much harder for them to leave the job. But if all similar companies are clustered around in a single place, then it's easier to attract talent, right? Reduce cost and exchange rate risk. So if there are raw materials that come out in a certain place, having manufacturing facilities near there will reduce cost because you don't have to transport raw materials very long distances. And same goes for exchange rate risk, right? So you have, by signing these treaties, you're essentially mitigating tariffs. Now, tariffs are, of course, a whole different thing that we're not going to talk about the tariffs that were implemented by the US government recently, but tariffs can be a tool that governments can use. I don't know. I feel like they were used. What should be a scalpel ended up being a hatchet. So tariffs are a conversation for a different time. But in general, trade agreements are made so that you can lower tariffs. And large trade agreements like NAFTA that became the USMCA, the European Union, the World Trade Organization, the CETO, CAFTA, Mercosur, these are all different countries, different groups of countries coming together and signing agreements to reduce the tariffs that they are under, right? And so it reduces costs, it reduces exchange rate risk and all of that. So that's an important piece. And obviously, and also to improve operations. It's not just the supply chain, not just locating your facilities closer to where the raw materials might be, but also being able to do your job better. So for example, like I said, with the South California example, if a lot of auto designers are in South California and you're trying to open an auto design shop, it makes sense to be in South California, right? Similarly, there's a lot of expertise, say, in Japan about inventory management. Toyota revolutionized the world with the way it managed its inventory, and a lot of companies around the world, including companies that are not car companies, use Toyota originated inventory management principles, and we'll talk about that in this class also, right? So if you are doing something inventory management related, maybe Japan might be a good place. Again, robotics, traditionally Germany has been a place where robotics have been developed really well, and there are a lot of experts in robotics in Germany. So if you're making auto cars that run by themselves, or delivery vehicles that run by themselves and things like that, Germany is the place to be. That sort of thing, right? So international operations can improve response time and customer service. Right. So understanding and accessing new markets is also important. So if you 7-Eleven is a great example of this. 7-Eleven started in Japan and has moved to the United States, and they have 7-Eleven in Japan and in the United States have very different ways in which the stores are managed, right? So the kind of food that's available, the kind of things that are available in 7-Eleven in Japan is very different than the 7-Eleven in, say, the United States. So understanding and accessing new markets is very important. So that's part of understanding your global strategy. And the final thing that we'll talk about is the final three things that we'll talk about is improving products, of course, so remaining open to free flow of ideas, and companies working together, right? And then attracting global talent. So that's an important thing. So sometimes you might want experts in a certain field who might be available only in a certain place, or experts in a certain field are available in a certain country, and you might moving them from that country to the host country might be difficult for visa reasons and all of that. So it might make sense for you to have an office. So Microsoft and a lot of tech companies do this, right? So they have offices in Seattle, in Silicon Valley, in Los Angeles, even in New York and Philadelphia. But they also have offices in India, they have offices in Vietnam, they have offices in China, where they have employees who pick up the work from the company, from teams who start the work in the United States. The work is finished in say an office in India, and then it's handed over to the work in the team in the United States, which finishes the next part, and then they swap the work on and off. So that's the idea there. So attracting and retaining global talent, and of course understanding more cultural and ethical issues, right? So there are really good reasons to globalize. And by understanding, quickly, one point I'll say is that understanding cultural and ethical issues are important so that you're able to not just make better treaties and laws, treaties with the countries there, but also better products that match their lifestyle. For example, I'll tell you this from personal experience that veggie burgers are something that Indians eat a lot in India, because India has a very large percentage of vegetarians. So about 30 odd percentage of Indians are vegetarian, and that's 30% of 1.4 billion people. So companies like McDonald's, even KFC, have vegetarian options in their food when they sell in India, right? And they have to do that. So it's not just cultural and ethical stuff, but also, well, good business. So understanding, being good at cultural and ethical understanding of somebody else's, being good at understanding somebody else's culture and the way they view ethics will help you do good business in those areas. Right. So I'm going to end this here. So these are the reasons why globalization is good. Now, there are obviously negative aspects to globalization also, and but again, they're not in the textbook. I'm not going to talk about that in this video. That's for a discussion that we can have later. So I'm going to end this video here. In the next video that I post, we're going to talk about the idea of mission and strategy. What is a company's mission? How does a company set a strategy? How does it translate into an operation strategy, and everything around that. It's already longer than 10 minutes, longer than I wanted it to be. So I will see you all in the next video. All right. Take care.